So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I bring you the journey of inspiring leaders who are driven by creating sustainable kind of impact, a healthy impact out there on the world. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Philippe Lavielle as my guest. Philippe is CEO and chairman of Fermentalg, a mission-driven biotech, producing a range of healthy and sustainable ingredients for the food and nutrition industries. Philippe has a really interesting story. He's worked for 30 years in the industrial biotech space, high growth positions, moved to the US where he led a venture-backed startup as a CEO, returned to Le Bourne just outside of Bordeaux in, I think, 2016 as chairman and CEO of French publicly listed biotech company Fermentalg. But Philippe loves the the sailing and outdoors life, and married to an English lady, and been married for 30 years and 3 daughters. We were just having a chat before about one of his daughters based in London, not too far from where I live, involved with impact investing. So look, Philippe, brilliant to have you on the show. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Now tell me, just if I take it all the way back, I mean, we've covered lots of your experience and an international kind of exposure there in the introduction, but what were the kind of real major influences that helped shape the ideas and aspirations of a young Philippe Lavielle?
Well, the young Philippe Lavielle, I guess age 25, 26, was a management consultant as a first job in a Swedish consultancy called SIR. And we had lots of Scandinavian clients. I was based in the Paris office and trying to figure out what consultancy was all about. One of our clients was a chap in the name of Gustav von Herzen, and he was the CEO of the Finnish sugar company, and he was a very visionary CEO. He wrote several books about, remember it was like the mid 1980s, so management theories were kind of flourishing then, and I remember him having this vision of transforming a sugar company into a biotech company, basically going down the value chain and using renewable carbon sources to make value-added products. And industrial biotech then didn't have a name. We didn't call it industrial biotech. It was just trying to figure out what these new technologies, life science based and new technologies were opening up as opportunities. And this guy, I remember, was very inspiring. And he had all sorts of ideas of what biotechnology would offer as new opportunities. And another client of mine was La Cellulose du Pain, which is a paper company in France. Was trying to figure out what to do and how to invest their R&D dollars. And I had this little mission there to try and audit their R&D facilities and try and figure out what was in the R&D pipeline. And guess what? In this one of the compartments of their R&D center, I found a very intriguing group of people who were working on applying biotechnologies, this very novel ground. Again, it's early mid 1980s. So applying these new technologies called biotech, which I'd never heard of, to the pulp and paper industry, and try and make that process is cleaner, more energy sober, that sort of thing. But it was like fundamental science, and that really intrigued me. And I put one and one together, and I called the chap in Finland, and my client, and I said, I mean, you guys should talk. And long story short, basically I pushed them to form a joint venture to develop new technologies for the pulp and paper industry. One who had a very strong biotech vision, and another one had an interesting application area. And we formed a joint venture called Biopulp International. And I thought my deal was done. I had done my consulting job, but then Gustav von Hertzen basically called me back and said, well, now you created it, and you've got to run it now. And so I basically took up that challenge without knowing what was ahead of me. And that's how I started in this business. Complete piece of luck in a way, and I found that very intriguing. And as a young man, I had so much to learn, and it was a complete virgin field. The technology wasn't there, the application areas were not there, the products were not there. I mean, it's like a complete open puzzle of things to put together, and that I like that very much. I like that very much. Right. So that's how I started, and then the same company, I don't know, 3-4 years later, the shareholders got a little tired of putting more money into this. Usual story. The need for capital was increasing, and the technology was not yet there. Even though we had done some very interesting piece of work and laid out some patent work, but they asked me to find another partner and to keep funding these activities. And one of the companies I was looking at was Genencor, a newly formed entity in California, funded by Genentech and Corning Glass to develop industrial applications for biotechnologies. Again, it was a very new field. And so at the end of the 80s, I think 89 or 1990, I went there and they agreed to acquire the company I was running. And again, I thought I was done, and I said, okay, I'm done. You buy it. Here are the keys to the truck. And Tom Mitchell, who was the CEO of Genencor at that time, said, oh, hold on a minute. We need young guys like you. There's so much to be done, and we've got nobody in Europe, and you're going to help us develop Genencor in Europe. And I said, okay, all right, fine, let's do it. And then I embarked on a career with Genencor without really knowing it either. What I knew was that Genencor's fantastic playground. I was discovering California then, and this huge positive energy that you have there, and the can-do attitude, and there were like 60 employees in Genencor in those days, and they were all working in one windowless warehouse. And
where were they based? Where were they based out of?
It was in South San Francisco.
Okay, was it? Okay, really?
That's where it was founded, up on the hill there, and in a warehouse. And there was, I remember there was only one window in that warehouse. we called that the window room, and which is, again, very new. And I was so excited about all the potential. Then I realized the vast potential that these biotechnologies would have on, industrial processes. That's when, early 1990s is when I think we coined the phrase of industrial biotech. because it was, biotech started, with pharma, companies like Genencor, who developed the first tools of modern biology, and Amgen and all that. They very quickly they said, hey, we're going to make lots of money. It's going to be in pharma. We're going to save lives. And that's when they all started. That's where biotech started. Mission was to save lives. But then at the same time, there are a bunch of people in there that discovered that you could do many other things. And some people started to work on agro, and the second wave of industrial biotech was definitely the agro wave, and you had the Monsantos and Pioneers and all these big actors, and what happened to all that. And the third wave that started emerging in the 1990s, but fairly slowly, was industrial biotech. So it's applying life sciences, applying the emerging biotechnologies to basically do two things. And in hindsight, it's easy to say what we were doing then, but I don't think we knew exactly what we were doing. But we were just trying to figure out as we went what these new technologies, what these new opportunities would be. But gradually, I think a picture emerged, and industrial biotech became a way. Basically, two big missions emerged. One was to do more with less. It was the message of sobriety, which is very, very present today. And but to do more with less, using catalytic chemistry, for instance, and trying to clean up the industrial processes, use more water-based chemistry as compared to solvent-based chemistry, using more low temperature processes as compared to high temperature, high pressure processes. So these were a number of panel of opportunities that appeared in this sector. And then the second big mission was that again emerged gradually, but it was really the decoupling from fossil carbon resources. So that's when we figured out that renewable carbon against fossil carbon, and even though the stress on the environment was not as strong as it is now, or the urge by the global community was not that prominent, but we could see some patterns emerging in the early 90s and saying, oh, maybe we could use renewable carbon instead of fossil carbon. We could use basically less fossil resources to do the same thing. So that's, it takes us into the 1990s really, and that's when this whole industry shaped up. The technology matured fairly quickly, industrial fermentation, catalytic enzyme processing, all these technologies that emerged and matured fairly quickly and opened up a number of avenues along the line of, industrial sobriety and decoupling from fossil carbon resources.
Yeah,
that's in a nutshell. That's how the emergence of industrial biotech. And I was very fortunate to be basically thrown into this and trying to figure out my way. Genencor was a fantastic, environment to work with and grow in. I did a lot of stuff for Genencor in Europe. We did several acquisitions. I did a lot of corporate, development activities. And then I was fortunate enough to run one of the divisions as a business unit manager and do a lot of business development on a global scale. So, hey, it was a great playground, great playground. Genencor was, I can't remember, about here, probably in the year 2000, 2001, was a voted great place to work, number one in our category. So it tells you the kind of atmosphere and positive energy that was in this company. Plus, we grew it from a startup, with a few mad scientists, to being a billion-dollar company. And,
yeah, wow.
So it took a long time. It was not kind of unicorn type of thing. It took a long time, a lot of twists and turns and hardship and ups and downs. But for those who had the patience, for those who had the passion, it's interesting to put these two words in the same sentence: patience and passion. It's patient passion. But you need that in industrial biotech. Things don't happen overnight. This is a very complex industry which requires a lot of capital and tends to displace very well established processes and value chains. It takes time to do all this, and that's my mantra these days. To every investor, to every management team, to every, if you're in a hurry, go and do an app or something, but or do some high frequency trading. But if you want to do real stuff, it's going to take time.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things you mentioned there. Look, you dedicated your whole career to industrial biotech, and you mentioned it early. There when it came to the replacement of carbon and fossil fuels, maybe there wasn't as much momentum back in the early 90s as there is now, where everyone is focused on that. But what really kept you in the industry for 30 years? What was really the glue that kind of kept you kind of really on the difficult challenge of you've mentioned it's a long-term challenge, so what was it about the industry that really kept you engaged?
Well, there's again, in hindsight, I think I could easily respond to the mission driven. We were out there to clean up industrial processes, make them more efficient. Do more with less was, even 30 years ago, was kind of exciting. I didn't really know what it meant, but it was exciting. And also, I guess the scope of the promise was enormous. When I started as a 25-year-old running this biotech venture in pulp and paper, I thought I would revolutionize the paper industry, and which was at the time one of the nastiest industries from an environmental profile. Remember dioxins, and remember lots of effluence problems in this industry, which then has cleaned up their act tremendously. Is now a very sustainable industry, even though it's a heavy industry, but they've done marvelous. But I thought with these new technologies, we can really change the profile of these industries, which obviously had a measure of truth, but it was like a 40, 50-year challenge.
Yeah.
And I had no idea of that. It was a huge, not only investments, discovery challenge, but also creating new value chains, changing the scope and the mindset of that industry, etc., etc. So the challenges were huge, and that probably it's this balance between huge challenges but huge opportunities. Nothing was neutral then. It was like, everything was so big and so vast and so difficult at the same time. So it felt like you were in a Manhattan project every day. Kind of impossible things to do, but you had to do them, and that probably fit my personality. That's why I kept at it. And there was, every morning there was another challenge, and there was another 10 opportunities, and you have to figure out which one would be the one that could make it and not make it. I remember there was at Genencor, there was like new technologies coming up every day, and people coming to my office saying, I was in charge of business development at the corporate level, and I had like a queue of people coming to me and say, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and there was always a sense of new things to be done. And huge difficulty in that kind of job was to say no to 95% of the opportunities. It is tough, but yeah, that I guess that's what kept me going, really. The constant wall breaking that happened in that industry all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing you as well, and having worked with you over the years, I can imagine that, for you, business development has always been that forte. It's always been, collaborating and bringing organizations together. I think you've referred to a couple of times during the earlier comments, as it were. So I can really see how your eyes would have kind of lit up, and that blank sheet of paper, this interesting technology, what am I going to do with it? Where can we bring the value? I can just see you enjoying that and really being comfortable in that ambiguity, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, yes, if you were the type of person that needed a stable framework, and that was not the place. I mean, it was like constant bubble, and you had to jump from one bubble to another before it burst. And it just there are lots of failure going through that. We were failing all the time, and so yeah, it fits some personalities and not others. I'm sure. Yeah, you're right. I always enjoyed understanding, trying to understand the motivation of organizations to work together. And, that's definitely one area where I enjoy myself most, to create joint ventures, create partnerships, even though some of them were very difficult. I remember I was the point person in a very long-lasting partnership between Genencor and Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble, as you know, is a very, very demanding organization. And they asked the best of us all the time, every day. And I had to keep always on your toes. And very difficult partnership, very demanding partnerships that I think I enjoy most. When you have to always find a reason to collaborate, even though things are difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about that it's interesting, isn't it, when you've got clients that are so demanding? I don't know, is there something about really wanting to impress them, for instance? Is it something about
maybe it's something, I would say maybe it's that wanting to impress, wanting to have validation from a third party. I think I always found you know, companies don't do that enough. Even the best, they get to get, complacent with what they have and what they've achieved, and sometimes it's great, but I'm always looking outside for validation,
Yeah.
always, and I think partnership is a lot about that. It's a lot about validating something which on your own you're unable to validate.
Yeah.
Or if you validate it, you validate it in such a framework that, okay, you're happy with you have what your folks have created, but that validation is useless.
Yeah.
So, third-party validation, I find also, trying to find acceleration points, trying to find ways to find shortcuts, so kind of change gears with through partnerships. So yeah, this is probably not very let's say original, but third-party validations, acceleration, all this is at the core of business development.
Yeah. And your next position after Genencor were acquired by DuPont, and I know you played a significant role within that, but you kind of left the business after that, and then you moved to the US with your family. I think you moved to Northern California, and you took up a CEO position of a company called Viridia, which were a venture-backed business, and that was your first kind of foray as a CEO. So
Indeed. I was in the US before that. I was in the US in the mid 2000, and so I was on the executive committee of Genencor for a few years and went through the acquisition phase. But then after 22 years, I think, with Genencor, it was time for me to move on. And yes, I was in Northern California at a time when everybody was getting really excited about industrial biotech, about lots of money was pouring into this, lots of startups everywhere. And there was a bounty of opportunities for a chap like me with business development expertise to take one of these and run with it. So, it was a good opportunity. It was given to me to become the CEO of a small company. I mean, I guess we were 25 when I started there.
Must have been very different.
Very different. But I was happy. It was very refreshing, and it was really, after a long period of maturation with Genencor, and Genencor at that time was becoming more and more corporate-like, and then jumping back into the fray with everything to be done in a company which we called Viridia, which was very much a biorefinery technology company. Same thing. I mean, I took it through several stages of development, went through, tough times and good times. And after 4 or 5 years, we sold it to a group, a Swedish group called Stora Enso. And, it was the right time for us to sell it. And I guess the asset we created is still very much alive within the new group. So that's good to know.
No, great experience. And tell me, at that time, working for the Silicon Valley investors and the investment community, that must have been something that you hadn't necessarily worked on before so much at Genencor in terms of the size that was at. What was that experience like, and how did you find, how did you find adapting into that kind of position?
Well, again, I had been in Northern California with my family for already 5 or 6 years. 6 years when that shift happened. So culturally speaking, there's not a big change.
So we were just saying about the culture, the culture of working for a venture backed, for instance.
So culturally, I was already well adapted, and so I didn't have that step to go through. But it's true that working for venture capital or with venture capital firms in the San Francisco Bay Area was tough. It was the pace and the pressure they put on you, they put on the boards, is much more than what you get in Europe, I find. It's like, I don't know, it's like first division. It's like, if you're in the Champions League, I guess, and you're not prepared for that. So a lot of French entrepreneurs who were coming to the Bay Area and saying, "Oh, how can we, have our startup there?" I said, "Are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want?" "Oh yeah, because we can raise so much more money then," and etc. But everything's bigger, but everything's much speedier and tougher. So it's true. Culturally, it's a very, very demanding environment. When you have a good idea, you have like 10 guys that have had that good idea at the same time, and pitching for the same capital. Which, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, the Silicon Valley environment is, which I've experienced for quite a while. It's great, but it's a valley of tears and blood. Nobody talks about it, but it's a very, very tough environment where few make it and a lot are completely eliminated and laminated. So you need to know that. You need to be aware of it and be ready for it if you want to go live the dream, and you need to be ready for a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And tell me, so after that, you came back, after you exited the business, you came back to Le Borgne, just outside of Bordeaux, and having been in the US for, well, it's probably about 10 years or so. Was it?
Yeah, more.
It must have been, I'm thinking, did you have a bigger cultural alignment going out to the US, or was it a bigger cultural alignment coming back to France?
Both ways was an adjustment. Coming back to France, I was pumped up. I was had all these experiences in the US and done a lot of stuff, and participated to 2 exits, and so I was coming in with let's say a high pace, high expectation attitude, where suddenly I came back to an environment which is much more structured, socially constrained. Definitely, I had to readjust. For a while, I was, giving what I thought I could give to my people, and then I realized that I was like a Martian, speaking Martian, and even though I was fairly convinced of what I had to deliver, few people actually understood me, and even fewer kind of thought this was making sense. So there was quite a cultural adjustment coming back. Very very difficult for me to say what environment is more prone to promote creativity, to promote good, social relationship, and to, the model of Silicon Valley is definitely a successful model, but it's not the only model that can be successful. And I think I'm glad to be part of the French environment of entrepreneurship right now, because there's a lot of stuff happening in a different way. Maybe the scale is different. When you raise 10 million euros here, you raise 80 or 100 million dollars in the US. Same exercise, same everything, but just the scale is bigger in the US. So the successes are bigger, the failures are bigger, everything's bigger. So we tend to play in a smaller scale, but at the same time, maybe we're a little more patient. We just don't discard things because they're not fashionable anymore, and so I kind of enjoy coming back to Europe. I enjoy that. Yes, it took some adjustment, but I was born and brought up in France, so I knew the codes, and I 10 years in, or 12 years, I don't know, 12 years in the US didn't really change my personality that much. But it's true that it's a big mistake thinking that what works over there should work here. The mentalities are not the same, expectations are not the same, the pace is not the same. But creativity, entrepreneurship, passion, all these things are deeply rooted in our European culture as well. Again, it's a different mode, different model.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to see the ecosystem evolving as well, though, in France as well. It's becoming a very, very nice region to start a company. It's still touch and go whether it can be a nice environment to grow big. The scaling factor is always a doubt, but I know that all the stakeholders are really aware of that and are trying to promote high growth organizations, are trying to promote unicorn type organizations. So France, and I know the UK is tremendous ground for creation. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of startups in France. The number of startups is incredible, and you get a lot of support. I mean, France is still pictured as a very bureaucratic, centralized type of. It's not true. It's not true anymore. You can create a company in 3 clicks, and you don't have to pay taxes for the next couple of years, and then so you can and you get, I think, a third of your R&D investment, which is reimbursed as a tax credit. I mean, this is tremendous benefits from being here. The education system is it could be better, but it's very reasonable. So you have good people. You don't have to fight day in, day out to keep your people like you have in the Silicon Valley. I mean, it's really difficult to keep people in the Silicon Valley. As a CEO, you come in every morning and say, who am I going to lose today? So, and that's not the case here. There's more stable relationships.
So the social contract is a little tighter.
Yeah.
And that plays a big role in at least in the industries that I've been involved in.
Yeah.
So big differences, but I'd say there's European countries as losers in this game at all. We need to fix a few things. We need to be aware of strategic areas in which we're lagging behind. Silicon Valley happened in the 1950s. It's been a 50-year investment, or now 70-year investment. A huge investment for 70 years to get to where they are.
Yeah.
So, we haven't followed the same path, but it doesn't mean that we've lost that game.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And so tell me a little bit about with Fermentalg. A little bit around, I know at the time you joined, they're a vastly different company today than they were there. But tell me a little bit about the, how you see the vision and the mission for the company, essentially, and what you've done really during those first few years.
Right. So the mission is very simple. Is to use the biology from microalgae to make products and services in the area of nutrition, health, and environmental control. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing. The company a few years ago when I joined was very much an R&D center, a research lab with very little understanding of what markets were, and so we had the positive of that is that we have a great team of scientists, and we have a technology asset there, or a number of technology assets that have been invested in, and which are very remarkable. And that's what really attracted me to Fermentalg, that there's good technology from let's say a strategic perspective, and from a commercial perspective, industrial perspective. We were really in our infancy, and so there was a lot of bricks to be added to that, to that business idea, and so we took it fairly systematically, and again, everything takes longer than one thinks to start with. But we managed to sell, to commercialize one of our first technology a couple of years ago in the omega-3 business. So that's functional lipids made by microalgae. We're now having a second platform, which is nearing commercialization, going through the hoops of regulatory and all that in alternative proteins. And so we have a good technology there, which is a fairly versatile technology, which will bring differentiated products to the market. So we're in the last stages of development, and the third leg of our business. So we have lipids, proteins, and the third leg is an environmental services leg, which we've been developing with Suez, the group Suez, which is one of the world leaders. I think it's the second largest environmental water remediation waste treatment company. So very good partner to have, and they're very interested in what technologies we've been developing to do two things, basically. First thing is to develop a biology and an engineering system to capture CO2. So it's carbon capture and valorization of atmospheric carbon into value-added products. So that's number one. And number two is pollution control, urban pollution. So as you may know, urban pollution is now, we have good mapping of urban pollution, and we know where, you know, you have hotspots at what time of day. And so with this kind of knowledge, we designed the machine, which is like a, we call that combinaire with Suez. It's like a big outdoor Hoover with lots of technology inside that allows to capture all the particles, the fine particles that are detrimental to human health, and also the you know, nitrogen oxides, which are also quite nocive. So we've designed that machine, and we're now piloting it for the first time outside of Paris in Poissy, in a schoolyard. So trying to make clean air bubbles is in urban environment is the pitch there. And if it works, it's, you know, this kind of machines is going to become part of urban landscape. You're going to have these machines attached to a bus stop, or attached to, you know, a tube entrance, or, you know, that sort of thing. And to be able to locate, that's the first job, to locate the hotspots for pollution in terms of nocivity, you know. Look at where people are most at risk and what type of people. That's why we started in a schoolyard, which is, you know, 300 yards from a major motorway. And we know that the kids are kind of developing bronchitis or asthma by inhaling this kind of particles every day. So the idea of creating a clean air bubble for either in areas that are super exposed to pollution, or for populations which are at risk because they're just younger, or they're you know, near hospitals. People are you know, are in poor health and that sort of thing. So again, environmental services, it's the third leg. It's we're working on it to kind of figure out how we're going to do that, really. But it's definitely a very important part of our future.
Oh, it sounds, you know, it sounds really exciting, and it sounds like it offers, you know, some great, you know, the technology offers such great solutions, you know, across this, you know, the environmental, the health and the nutrition. And you know what the funny thing is, you're talking about this 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when you first started, about, you know, you could see how you could do, you know, more with less, for instance, and how that was, you know, that was very much at the, you know, on your mind, and that was very much what brought you into the business. But now, you know, there's a clamor for this now. You know, we know that the drivers are out there. You know, there is investment, there is interest in protecting our planet, in climate change and reversing climate change, in some of these particular solutions. So it must give you a lot of pride, you know, knowing that you're, you know, that you're really giving back, and your whole business and the DNA of your business is just designed to create a healthier world.
Yes, indeed. I mean, mixed feelings. Pride, certainly, and it's very important for our employees. You know, people who work for Fermentalg, with Fermentalg. Yeah, it's part of the joy of working in that industry. It's not like we're making, you know, cannons to destroy the planet or anything. We're developing technologies with purpose. And the flip side of that is, have we done enough? Have we done enough? It's a constant thing. Are we doing enough? Is this getting big enough, fast enough? And on that flip side of the coin, it's no, we haven't. You know, our generation has been slow to respond to a known challenge. And we're now in a situation where whatever you bring to the table This is, well, are we already late to bring that to the table? So you need to balance that view. Yeah, it's great to have a mission to make the world a better place, a cleaner place, and a safer place for the future generations. It's great. And at the same time, that responsibility is kind of daunting because there's so much to do and we need to do it quick. So I'd say it's depending on what side of the bed I get up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's we should be doing so much more.
Yeah, understand. Well, look, Philippe, it's been brilliant talking with you. And I mean, what I would say is, I get the frustration. Yeah, I can hear that you want to do more, as it were. But the company, your service to the industry, the things that really kind of drive you as a human being, and the company you're leading are providing solutions. So, I thank you for that. And it's been great having you on the show. Really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you, Simon. It's been a pleasure as always to talk to you. And sorry for the interruption.
No worries. All right. No worries.
Okay.
Philippe, listen, that was great. Thank you very much for that.
All right. Cheers.
That's brilliant. I appreciate that. So I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
We're probably about 4 weeks away from putting it out there, but I'll be in touch nearer the time, and I'll share some things with you.
All right. Cheers.
Listen, take care of yourself. Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
All the best. Take care. Cheers, Philippe. Bye-bye.